Something is wrong. Not outside, but inside, the energy around you. It feels like the world is normal, but something in the background is not. Like there is a layer of reality you are not fully seeing right now, and that layer is watching you back. You cannot explain it properly, but you feel it. That strange pause in the air when you enter a room. That sudden silence when your thoughts get too deep. That feeling that something unseen is aware of you. And even if you try to ignore it, it doesn't go away, because some moments in life don't announce themselves loudly. They come quietly, like a thought you didn't think on your own, and today is one of those moments. You didn't land here by accident. Something pulled you here, not physically, but spiritually. And before you dismiss this as imagination, understand something very clearly. There are moments when life becomes sensitive, like the air is listening, like something beyond your understanding is checking alignment. And in those moments, even small thoughts feel heavy. Even silence feels meaningful. Even your instincts start acting differently. You may not understand it yet, but your awareness has already increased, and that is not random, because awareness always increases before change. Now listen carefully. There are times when life feels like it is moving normally, but underneath that normal surface, things are shifting. People change behavior. Situations feel slightly off. And your intuition starts noticing things your logic ignores. At first you think it's nothing, just coincidence, just stress, just overthinking. But then patterns start forming, and patterns are never random. They are signals. And signals always mean something is being revealed. There is a reason you are more alert recently. There is a reason certain thoughts keep repeating. There is a reason your instincts feel sharper than usual. Because awareness is not something that arrives randomly. It activates, and when it activates, you start seeing what you were never meant to ignore. Now here is the part you need to understand very deeply. Not everything that enters your life comes with noise. Some things come silently, through people you trust, through situations that look normal, through conversations that feel harmless. But behind that normal surface, something else exists. Something hidden, something calculated, and something that only becomes visible when it is already close. But here is what most people never realize. Even in those unseen layers of life, there is another force working quietly. A force that does not announce itself, a force that does not need attention. It simply responds and protects without permission, without explanation, and without delay. Because not everything in your life is left unguarded. Some paths are watched, some moments are corrected, and some outcomes are silently redirected before they reach you, and you never even know it happened. You only feel the after effect, that strange relief that you cannot explain. That moment when something almost happened, but didn't. That is not luck, that is interference. And interference only happens when something was not meant to continue. Now listen carefully. There are people in life who feel like they are just around you. Nothing special, nothing obvious. But energy is not always visible in actions. Sometimes it is in intent, and intent leaves traces. You feel it before you understand it. That slight discomfort, that hesitation, that instinct that says something is off. Most people ignore it. But ignoring intuition does not remove it. It only delays understanding, and understanding always comes later. Sometimes too late for regret. Sometimes just in time for awareness. But today is not about fear. Today is about clarity. Because clarity is the only thing that breaks confusion, and confusion is where most negative influence survives, not in darkness, but in misunderstanding. So if your mind feels more active lately, if your thoughts feel deeper than usual, if your instincts feel stronger, do not suppress it. Observe it. Because awareness is not your enemy. It is your protection system activating, and when it activates, you are no longer the same person who ignored signs before. You start noticing patterns, you start questioning silence, you start reading energy instead of just words, and slowly, you begin to see what was always there, but hidden from your attention. Now take a moment here, because what comes next in this message is not about fear. It is about recognition. Recognition that not everything is random. Not every delay is coincidence. Not every shift is meaningless. and not every feeling you have been ignoring is just in your head. Some feelings are information, and information always arrives before truth becomes visible. And once awareness begins, it never stops at just noticing. It goes deeper, because awareness is not just about seeing things differently. It is about realizing that what you thought was random was never random at all. There are connections forming in your life right now. Not loud connections, not obvious ones, but silent threads that start making sense only when you step back and look at the bigger picture. And when you do, you begin to feel something uncomfortable, not fear, but realization that some of the things you trusted without question were not as simple as they appeared. Now listen carefully. There are moments in life when people around you feel familiar, but their energy changes over time. Not suddenly, but gradually. So slowly that your mind adjusts before your instincts catch up. At first, you ignore it. You tell yourself it's just mood, changes, just stress, just coincidence, but your inner awareness does not accept that explanation fully, because something in you remembers how things used to feel, and now they feel different. That difference is not your imagination. It is perception sharpening, and perception always sharpens before truth becomes unavoidable. There is something deeply important you must understand here. Not every influence in your life is visible. Some influence works through presence, through timing, through subtle shifts in behavior that only become meaningful when you look back. And when you do look back, you start seeing patterns you missed in the moment. That is how awareness works. It never reveals everything at once. It reveals in layers, and each layer changes how you understand everything before it. Now here is where things become more intense. Because sometimes life does not just show you awareness, it removes illusions. And when illusions start breaking, confusion rises first. That confusion feels like emotional weight, like overthinking, like something inside you is trying to connect dots that don't fully fit yet. But in reality, the dots are already connected. Your mind is just catching up, and this is the part most people struggle with. They confuse realization with paranoia, but there is a difference. Paranoia creates fear without reason. Awareness creates clarity with discomfort. And what you are experiencing right now is not confusion without cause. It is clarity forming before understanding completes. Now, let's go deeper. There are moments when certain people in your life behave in ways that feel slightly inconsistent. Not openly harmful, not directly obvious, but inconsistent enough that your intuition pauses, and that pause is important, because intuition does not pause for nothing. It pauses when something does not align with your internal sense of truth. Most people override that pause, they explain it away, they normalize it. But awareness never forgets what it felt, and later, those small pauses become full understanding. Now here is something very important. Not every truth arrives with proof. Some truths arrive with feeling first, and proof later. And that delay is what confuses people, because they expect truth to be visible immediately. But real truth often arrives in silence, before it becomes visible in reality. And during that silence, you are tested not by anything external, but by your own awareness. Whether you will ignore what you feel, or trust what you sense. And this is where your inner shift begins, because once you start trusting your awareness, you stop living only in what is shown, and start noticing what is implied, and that changes everything. Now listen carefully. There are forces in life, whether you interpret them spiritually or psychologically, that act as protection, correction, and redirection. Sometimes you feel it as intuition, sometimes as sudden realization, sometimes as an unexplained stop inside your mind before a decision, and many times, you don't even realize that something was prevented until much later. When you look back and think, why did I not go there that day? Why did I delay that decision? Why did something feel off at the last moment? That is when understanding finally connects, and what felt like confusion before becomes clarity. Now pause here mentally, because what you are starting to see is not just a story. It is a pattern recognition shift. And once your mind enters that stage, you can never fully go back to ignoring subtle signals again. You start reading energy differently. You start questioning silence differently. And most importantly, you start trusting your internal awareness more than external noise. That is not fear. That is awakening of perception. And perception, once awakened, does not return to sleep easily. And now something changes again, but this time, it is different because awareness is no longer just something you are experiencing. It is something you are becoming. And once you reach this stage, there is no going back to ignorance the same way. You start seeing life with a different weight, a different depth, a different silence. And in that silence, something inside you begins to settle. Not fear, not confusion, but understanding that something has been unfolding around you in ways you never fully noticed before. Now listen carefully, because this is where everything connects. Every feeling you ignored, every moment you questioned, every instinct you brushed aside. All of it was not random. It was part of a larger pattern of awareness building inside you, and when patterns reach completion, they always reveal meaning. There are moments in life when everything that once felt scattered suddenly starts forming a single line, and that line leads you to one realization. Nothing important in your life was ever truly just happening. Some things were guiding your attention, some things were redirecting your steps, and some things were making sure you did not stay unaware forever. Now, as this realization deepens, there is a strange emotional shift because clarity does something very powerful. It removes fear from confusion and replaces it with truth, and truth feels heavier at first, but cleaner. You begin to understand that many moments you thought were coincidence were actually moments of alignment. And alignment is not random. It always has direction, always has purpose, always has meaning that becomes visible only when you are ready to see it. Now take this deeper. There are points in life where your intuition becomes stronger than your logic, where you feel something before you understand it, where you sense direction before explanation arrives, and most people dismiss that, but those who don't start living differently. They start noticing patterns in timing, patterns in behavior, patterns in silence, and slowly, they realize something important. Life does not always speak in words. Sometimes it speaks in signals, and signals are only understood when awareness is awake. Now here is where the emotional depth becomes real. Because once you begin trusting your awareness, you also begin releasing confusion you carried for too long. You stop forcing explanations for everything. You stop chasing clarity from people who never gave it, and you stop doubting what your inner self already understood. And that moment is powerful, because it is not just understanding life differently, it is understanding yourself differently. Now, let's go to the deepest layer of this message. There are moments in life when protection is not visible. It does not announce itself. It does not make noise. It does not seek attention. It simply exists in the background, adjusting outcomes quietly, redirecting paths silently, and preventing things you were never meant to experience. And you only realize it later. When something that could have gone wrong didn't, when something that felt uncertain never reached completion, when something that could have changed everything never fully happened. That realization often comes with emotion, because you understand that not everything you survived was just luck. Some of it was timing, some of it was redirection, and some of it was protection you never saw. Now pause here, because this is important. At this stage of awareness, your perspective on life changes permanently. You stop seeing everything as random, chaos, and you start seeing structure. You start seeing timing. You start seeing meaning in moments you once ignored. And that changes how you move forward. Because awareness does not just reveal truth, it changes behavior, it changes decisions, it changes how you interpret everything around you. Now emotionally, this is where many people feel a deep internal shift. Not because something external changed, but because something internal finally aligned. And when alignment happens, confusion cannot survive in the same space. Now, if you are still watching this, it is not just curiosity anymore. It is connection. Something in this message is resonating with something already inside you, something already known, but not fully acknowledged. And that is why it feels intense. Not because it is new, but because it is being remembered. And as this feeling deepens, there is only one realization left. You were never truly lost. You were becoming aware. Step by step, moment by moment, signal by signal. And now, you are here, at clarity, at awareness, at understanding. And once you reach this point, you don't return to blindness the same way again. Because now you know that even in silence, something is always aware of you, and even in uncertainty, something is always aligning your path, and even in confusion, there is always meaning waiting to be seen. Final endings instead of fear. You move with awareness instead of panic. You move with understanding, and instead of confusion, you move with clarity. Because now you know something very important. You are not just living life. You are experiencing it unfolding, step by step, with meaning behind it, and that changes everything. And now, everything feels quieter. But it is not the same kind of quiet as before. This is a different silence, a silence that does not feel empty, but full of understanding, full of realization, full of something that words cannot completely capture. Because once awareness reaches its peak, life does not shout anymore, it whispers. And those who have reached this stage begin to notice that even silence has meaning. Now listen carefully, because what you are feeling right now is not confusion anymore. It is integration. Everything you experienced, everything you felt, everything you questioned, is no longer scattered in pieces. It is forming a single understanding inside you. And that understanding is this: nothing you went through was meaningless, not the doubt, not the awareness, not the emotional intensity, not the moments you almost ignored your intuition. Everything was guiding you toward this level of perception. And now that you are here, you start to see life differently. You don't just react anymore. You observe. You don't just assume anymore. You sense. And you don't just believe everything you hear anymore. You feel what aligns and what doesn't. That shift is irreversible. Now here is something very deep you must understand. There are phases in human awareness where everything feels uncertain, where truth and doubt exist together, where emotions feel stronger than logic, and where silence feels louder than words. But after that phase comes clarity, not sudden clarity, but stable clarity, the kind that does not shake easily, the kind that does not depend on external validation, the kind that comes from within. And once that kind of clarity arrives, you stop searching for answers in chaos, because you realize answers were never in chaos to begin with. They were in awareness. Now emotionally, this is the point where many people feel a deep internal release, not sadness, not fear, but release. Like something heavy they didn't even know they were carrying is no longer needed, and that feeling is powerful because it marks the end of confusion-based thinking and the beginning of awareness-based living. Now, look back for a moment, not with fear, but with understanding. All those moments where you felt something is off were not accidents. All those times your intuition reacted before your mind understood were not imagination. All those silent feelings you ignored were not meaningless. They were part of your inner awareness trying to speak to you, and now you are finally listening differently, not louder, but deeper. Now here is the final truth of this entire journey. Awareness does not remove challenges from life, but it changes how you walk through them. You stop being pulled by confusion, and you start being guided by clarity. You stop reacting to everything around you, and you start understanding what deserves your attention and what does not, and that alone changes your entire path, because life does not change first. Perception does. And once perception changes, everything else follows. Now, if you feel a strange calmness after watching this, do not ignore it. That is not emptiness. That is alignment. That is your mind settling after awareness expansion. That is your inner system adjusting to clarity. And it is important to let that settle, without rushing to explain it, because not everything needs explanation immediately. Some things need presence. Now, as this message comes to its final moment, understand this clearly. You are not at the beginning anymore. You are not in confusion anymore. You are not unaware anymore. You are in awareness, and awareness is not loud, it is steady, it is grounded, it is real, and once you experience life from this level, you cannot fully return to how you saw things before, because now you know. There is always more beneath what is visible, there is always meaning behind timing, and there is always a deeper layer behind experience. So instead of fear, you move with understanding. Instead of confusion, you move with awareness, and instead of doubt, you move with clarity. And that is where this message truly ends. Not with fear, not with warning, but with awareness.